Today, this message is for anyone out there who is actively dating. If you're someone who is in the process of trying to find your person, or you're just out there dating and maybe you're new to it, maybe it's been a while, maybe you're not sure, exactly how to go about starting the process, I wanted to share with you what I personally feel like are the most important questions for you to ask on a first date. Of course, when we go on a first date, there's a lot of questions that can be asked. Just common, what's your background? Do you have kids? Do you want more kids? What's your job? What are your goals in life? Things like that. But the questions I'm going to talk about today have a deeper meaning behind them that, in my opinion, as a professional who works with couples, I can tell you will play a huge role in the either success or the downfall of your relationship. The first question is very basic, and it's probably one that you would already assume would be on the list to ask anyway. But this is, what do you do for a living? The reason why we want to know this is not because I want to know how much money you make or anything like that. The reason why we're asking is because we want to know whether our partner is in a career that they feel like is lifelong for them, whether they're already at a place where they're able to pursue their passions, or if they're starting fresh in something and they're still kind of on that wobbly road of, I'm not really sure what I want to do. This is what I do now, but that might change. Because if they are in a position where they don't love what they do, chances are there's going to be another job coming down the road, and you could very well be a part of that transition. So we want to know, are you in a career that you've been in for a long time that shows longevity and stability? Or are you just starting a career, so you're not really sure how you feel? Are you goal directed? Is this something where a job's a job and it's just how I pay my bills and that's how I see my work, which some people do? Or is this someone that has goals that they're reaching or aiming for? And where are they in that process? Someone's career also plays a big part in what their daily life looks like. So do you go to work first, second, third shift? Do you have a flexible schedule? You're taking in all this information as you're talking to the person and kind of figuring out if that's something that you feel like you could fit into. If for me in a relationship, it's really important that I go to bed with my partner every night, but I am on a first date talking to this person and they tell me they work third shift. That's something I'm going to want to know. That's a huge part of what could end up being a source of conflict in our future. If I know that is a big deal to me, but they can't give up their job and that shift for where they're at in life. So paying attention to those kinds of things and asking the questions to continually check with yourself as the person is telling you about their career. Could I fit into this? Is their job stressful? How do they handle stress? Or do they feel like they're in a place where they're happy, things are running well, and they have the time to commit to you in a relationship if that's the direction that things end up going? Okay, the second thing you want to ask is, what went wrong in your previous relationships, especially if they were long-term? And honestly, if someone has not had any long-term relationships, that alone might be a little bit of a red flag outside of if this person is very young. But we do want to know what happened in your past relationship. I don't need to know all the details on a first date, that's crazy. But I do want just a general idea of what went south. This can tell me a lot. I'm going to pay attention to what that person says as far as how they speak about their ex, because someone who is disrespectful and speaks very negatively about their ex is, again, kind of a red flag to me. Only because if they're going to speak that way about their ex, especially if their ex is the mother or father of their child, then that doesn't take you out of the equation for future. So if they're going to, discount the positives of that person, even though the relationship didn't work, a little bit of a red flag. But you want to hear that person take some form of accountability. If a person that you're talking to is all about blaming the other person for everything that went wrong and they have no ownership, that also is a red flag. That's something we want to watch for. And why? Because when we get into a relationship with them, we want to make sure that this is a person who can own their stuff. We need two people to participate in a relationship. And that means both people are responsible for their own stuff. If your date is telling you, I didn't do anything, they did this, they did that, they were like this, they did that, then that's a little concerning, because we all know, right? No one is perfect. So what did you do in the relationship? Like, where did you go wrong? And you can ask that question. There is nothing wrong with that. If maybe I'm telling you what happened in my past relationship and you're like, okay, well, where do you fit into that? Like, where did you go wrong, or what would you change about how you did in that relationship? And I'm like, nothing. I was perfect. Honestly, I didn't do anything. Then, that's something to think about. You also want to pay close attention to the emotion that is expressed as your person, your date, is telling you about their past relationship. The reason why we want to pay attention to this is if that relationship ended and I have a clear start, I've taken the time to heal, be my own self, recover, feel good, and move into the next one, I should not be sharing or recounting stories of why that relationship ended with a lot of anger or tears or high emotion, because that would show that maybe I haven't quite moved through the healing process and I'm still holding on to some baggage from that relationship. So we want to ask, what happened in the relationship that made it end? What was your ownership in it? And pay attention to the emotion that you're hearing in the individual's voice as they share those stories with you. Okay, number 3 for me is attachment styles. And sometimes I'll tell my clients this, on a date, I absolutely am like, what's your attachment style? And I know I'm a therapist, so, maybe that gives me a pass. But if you don't know what attachment styles are, one, you should do your research on that when you're dating. It is so important. It is so important. It plays a role in every single day of your life in a relationship with somebody. And there are assessments that you can take very easily. If you're interested in one, absolutely send me a message and I will send you a link to do so you can find out what your attachment style is. However, going back to finding out what attachment style your partner has. Now, if they say, I don't even know anything about attachment, cool. Like, it's something that's really important to me. I know what I am, and do you think you would be interested in taking an assessment? It would be really, really cool to find out what you are. And it might end at that, on a first date, and maybe you can send them attachment and go from there, or the survey. But the reason why I tell you this is important is because when we talk about attachment, we all develop this when we're born and in our first very impressionable years of life. We create either healthy or unhealthy attachments to our caregivers. Now, you can have really great parents and still have an unhealthy attachment style, so don't just automatically assume that, well, they said they have good parents, still married, great family, no complaints, healthy attachment. That's not necessarily how it works. So it's still important to know where that partner, or potential partner lies on this spectrum of attachment. You can be either anxious or avoidant or secure. Those are the 3 basic attachment styles. What we see is with anxious and avoidant attached people, they manage conflicts very differently, night and day. So you need to know, is the person that I'm with more anxiously attached, meaning they might come across as a little more needy in relationships. They need a lot of affirmation and reassurance. Or are they more avoidant, which those people tend to kind of shut you out and they don't do well with conflict, because they become emotionally overwhelmed. And if you guys are both avoidant, both anxious, all of that plays a huge role. I will just add to that briefly. If you have an unhealthy attachment style, meaning you're avoidant or you're anxious and you're not secure, that does not mean that you can't become secure. This is not like someone who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia and they're just going to have that their whole life. An attachment is something that can be changed and shifted in a positive direction with the appropriate amount of work. So take the assessment if you haven't done so yourself, find out, do some self-reflection, and then also, again, on your date, maybe bring that up. Find out if they know what it is. If they don't, which I'm assuming most people probably wouldn't, it could give you something really cool to talk about and just kind of explore in future dates if that's something you decide to do. Okay, so number 4 for me, this is I want to know about your personality. Like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Why does this matter? I'm very introverted. The reason why that would matter to someone that was dating me is they would need to know that I can get very emotionally drained when I'm around crowds of people for extended periods of time. It's just how I am. It's my personality. I was born with it. And so I can do the social events, but I tap out pretty quickly and I'm always ready to be on my way. If you are an extrovert, that could end up being an issue in our relationship. If you love social outings and you can go to every single outing that you're ever invited to and be there until it closes, I'm going to struggle with that because I don't want to be there till it closes. I don't want to be there for 6 hours. You know, I can go and show my face and interact and be there for a couple hours and then I want to be done. You can work around these changes or, you know, how you're different from your partner, but it is something worth noting as you talk to somebody. And the one thing I will say too is a lot of people assume introverts are shy and extroverts are outgoing. And that is actually not how we define introvert versus extrovert. An introvert gets their energy by kind of recharging on their own. So if I'm out at a family picnic and I've been there for 3 or 4 hours, it's like my battery, you know, like I'm draining as the day goes. And I want to come back home because that's where I almost like plug myself in. Like I'm by myself in my space. It's quiet. I feel good. That's what I need before I can go back out and be social again. An extrovert's the opposite. So they charge. It's like their battery charging is when they're around other people. When they come home, their battery drains. And so we are very different in where we get our energy and what makes us happy and maybe what drains us. You also want to know, I mean, I'm getting older, so I'm definitely a homebody, but am I on a date with somebody who is not, who loves to go out, who hates sitting home, is just a very social person? That again could create some issues in that relationship long term. If I'm wanting to stay home and I want my partner to stay home with me, but they want to go out all the time, then it's like I can't force them to stay home with me because that's what I want. They can't force me to go out with them because that's what they want. There will have to be a lot of compromising between the two of you on how you negotiate your social outings or staying in, and so that is something worth noting as well. Another thing that you might want to pay attention to is asking this potential partner how much of a risk taker they are. This plays a lot of parts in our life, not just in regards to maybe what kind of dates they want to go on, but also, again, personality. So someone who's more of a risk taker might be a little more impulsive with the decisions they make. And if you are someone that is not a risk taker and kind of likes things the same all the time, you don't do well with surprises, you prefer things to be planned out, and you're not impulsive, you guys are going to see things very differently. It could create some issues where that person does not feel fulfilled in your relationship because you never do anything fun, and you don't feel fulfilled in the relationship because they're always, you know, nagging you about going out or, you know, feeling like they're forced to stay in. So that is also another important part about someone's personality that you want to pay attention to. Lastly, with personality, I think it's really important, and sometimes we can tell just by sitting down and talking to someone if they are more of a laid-back person or if they're more uptight or type A. A laid-back person is going to be exactly what we know laid-back is. Like, kind of go with the flow, not make a big deal out of things, tends to maybe be a little more lackadaisical about their life. You know, maybe decisions in life, things that you do, people that come in and out, the way they parent. And someone who's type A is going to be a little more stringent, very strict, organized, structured. I want things a certain way, and they struggle when things are not like that. So when we put a laid back person with a type A person, they can make it work, but again, compromises around what that looks like. The laid back person should not have to feel like they're like living with a drill sergeant all the time. And the type A person needs to make sure that they're not acting bossy and demanding that the laid back person fulfill their world in the way that they want everything to be organized. All right, lastly, number 5, and what I feel like is extremely important. If you don't ask any of the other questions, definitely make sure you put this up here and ask on that first date. When someone has come out of a relationship prior to obviously dating you, and there's a space in between that relationship and when you're dating that person, I want to know what that space is. Did you just break up with your girlfriend or boyfriend a week or two ago? Has it been years? Besides that, how have you grown and what has changed for you in that amount of time that you have been single? It might seem like a loaded question, and I guess it could be, but what we are actually looking for when we ask this question is some sort of accountability and desire for growth. The desire for growth is huge because that is going to show you whether that person, if you decide to be in a relationship with them, is willing to grow alongside you and change as you change, or if they stay stagnant in where they are and resistant to any kind of growth or even potential for changes in their life. If I am talking to someone who says they had an issue with commitment in their prior relationship, and it's been a year or so, and now they've done some work and they realize like they're ready, maybe they spoke to a therapist or they read some books, I want to know, okay, so that's really cool. Like, what did you learn? Why were you struggling with commitment? What was scary to you about that? Maybe to simplify it, if I'm on a date with someone who says they had a lot of issues controlling their anger and they were struggling to, manage that in their relationship and it just ended, I want to know what are you doing or what have you done to learn to self-regulate and manage the anger that you have in the times that you have been single. Because I want to hear this potential partner tell me that they are, one, totally fine or invested in going to therapy to have someone keep them accountable, or two, that they have looked it up, used ChatGPT, you can read books, you can talk to a friend, I don't really care what it is, but it's you, one, going back to owning whatever it is that your struggle was and sharing with me just basic details on how you have changed and your desire to continue to grow and be your best self. If my potential partner cannot share that with me, I'm going to see a huge red flag because I know in my relationship, I do things wrong, I mess up, and I need to sit back, reflect, make my own changes in order to make that relationship better. I want and I need my partner to do the same. If I am going to therapy, I'm reading the books, I'm taking ownership for my stuff, but you're just sitting on the sidelines like, yep, go ahead and fix that because you have a problem, so fix it, and I'll just be waiting here. It's not gonna work, you guys, it's not. I had a relationship like that where it was like, you need help, I don't. I'm good, I think you have the problem, and so guess what I did? I went to therapy. And I was in therapy, my partner was not, for about a year. I was in my own individual therapy. And what happened is we were going back and forth like this, and then I entered therapy and I started growing and learning and developing and becoming a better version of myself. And my partner's here because he didn't have anything he needed to work on, but I did. And so we all have things to work on. So no one is perfect. No one's up here. We're all here, right? And as I am working on stuff in therapy or I'm reading books, I want my partner to also do the same. That doesn't mean that your partner has to go to therapy. Some people don't want to do that or can't do it, can't afford it, whatever, and that's fine. There are so many books out there. There's so much self-help. There's online support groups. There's ways to engage in conversation where you can start to take accountability for your own stuff in order to grow alongside your partner. And the best and longest relationships are with two people who are doing that together. So, in the grand scheme of things, as we talk about the top 5 questions that you should ask, I want you to, obviously, I suggest you ask all 5 questions. But if you don't ask any of them again, focus on that last one. Where have you grown since your last relationship? What are you currently working on in order to be the best version of you? I want to know that because it shows a lot of emotional maturity. It shows a lot of emotional intelligence, and it gives you an idea of maybe how vulnerable that person can be in sharing that, yeah, I'm not perfect and I am always working on my stuff, but I'm ready to give to somebody. And hopefully that person is you. So, those are just my ideas of what the top 5 questions are. Of course, you could probably Google it, and there's probably a million other questions that you could ask. But from a therapist perspective, when we're thinking about creating a life with somebody, I mean, you're dating. This is for people, obviously, who are dating for long term, not just to date. But we're looking for someone that we're going to be compatible with and that can grow alongside us. And these questions should definitely help you get there. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to share it with anybody that you feel like might benefit from any of that information. And as always, like and subscribe and catch me on the future podcasts.